So I just saw the new Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon, a film I've been waiting to see, and I loved it. I'll talk spoiler free for the first part of the review, and then later on I'll talk more plot heavy elements if you don't want to be spoiled. But I will say, this 3.5 hour love story epic is one of the saddest chapters in American history and a tragedy fitting a director like Martin Scorsese. So when I heard that this film was coming out, I wanted to read the book ahead of time, so many of the plot elements and events in the stories I knew ahead of time, and I was interested to see how they would play out on the big screen. One thing that I was disappointed to hear was the fact that it was from the perspective of Ernest, the white husband to one of the Osage Indians, Molly. Mainly because in the book, a lot of that is just reading fact after fact with practically no plot, and so it was really boring. Actually, the first part of the book almost made me drop the rest of it until the part about the FBI agents kicked in, which is really the main meat of the story when it comes to the book. But in a recent interview, Marty said that him and Leo were discussing where the heart of the story was, and they decided that the story should be focused more on these two characters. And I will say, after watching the movie, that it was a decision that made the film better. Because a lot of the murders happen over a very long period of time. A lesser director would get lost in that timeline, but Scorsese is able to put us right into the subjective, personal view of these two characters and their marriage, making you really feel the weight of these events. And that's one thing I noticed about this movie, is that we spend so much personal time with not just the main characters, but a lot of the side characters, without feeling like we're wasting time on small talk. Because it is over 3 hours long, but it does not feel that way. Every scene feels like it's on purpose, and it moves the plot at a steady but fast pace. This is helped by the three main actors, Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. All three of them are killing it in this movie. It's amazing to see someone like Robert De Niro, late in his years but still crushing it and not phoning it in as someone with his prestige could. Leonardo DiCaprio really pushes the limits of how much depth and change he can do with one character, because there are certain scenes that require him to be very serious, very somber, and some even very funny. But really the emotional punch and the emotional weight of this movie comes from Lily Gladstone, who does not fall behind these two veterans of the craft. And she brings the full message of the story to life, that love can make us blind to the truth, and she does not hold back on that. She's definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie. Editing, something not talked about as often as should be in film discussion, is really important for a movie like this. Thelma Schoonmaker really shows her craft here when it comes to editing down everything to its perfect length. Some of these scenes are just done amazingly, especially the parts with Molly's mother, because she's not seeing things in real life, she's seeing visions. And so the editing here is top notch and really expects the audience to know and to be trusted with what is being on the screen, to pick up on these little details, these little moments, and keep moving forward. Of course, there's some amazing shots here by the cinematographer Rodrigo Puerto, coming back also with Martin Scorsese. One of my favorite shots has to be the one from the trailer where all the people are staring at the camera. They all just look so pale and fat and evil. He's doing an amazing job with the light direction here. There's so much depth to it, and I really love some of the later on scenes that I don't want to spoil. He does an amazing job coloring the image. Also surprisingly, but also not very surprisingly, Martin is able to put in some comedy in here. For such a serious subject matter, he's able to bring in relieving moments of tension, of comedy, without taking away from the seriousness of the plot. You'll be laughing one moment, and then you'll just smoothly transition back into the heaviness of the plot without skipping a beat. Glad to see that Martin Scorsese still has it, and I hope he lives to be 150 to keep giving us amazing, unique, and exciting stories for the years to come. Now I'm going to get more into spoiler talk. My review for the movie, I would give it a 9 out of 10 or a 4.5 on Letterboxd if you follow me there. So I'm going to talk more about plot-heavy elements. If you do not want to be spoiled, this is where you click away. Like I said earlier, the movie does not focus as much on the investigation as the book does, but it's still amazing to see how many little details they're able to put in the movie from the book that I didn't think they would be able to fit in at all. Like the fact that the funeral directors were charging the Osage more for coffins and other services because they knew they could get away with it, or the fact that the two doctors working on Anna's body butchered it on purpose and stole the bullet away. And the little pieces of dialogue, those very few little scenes where we see Molly talking to her caretaker because she's not trusted enough with her own money. Some interesting things that I thought the book did talk about, for some reason they didn't put into the movie, like the fact that the main investigator, Tom White, goes to a penitentiary after his retirement from the FBI and becomes warden of the prison that William Hale is sent to after his imprisonment, which I think is really funny, a little bit too poetic, I would say. And also the fact that even though William Hale was the main guy that orchestrated a lot of these murders and was the main ringleader, there were dozens and dozens of other suspects that were never even tried, and probably hundreds of deaths that weren't even suspected of being murders. They talk about it a little bit, or at least they hint a little bit in the movie about the fact that some people try to adopt these kids and murder them, but in the book they cover extensively just how many of these Osage Indians actually suffered at the hands of their caretakers or adopted parents. It is a really sad story, and the fact that it is based on true real life events with a lot of evidence really makes this so much more sadder to watch and to read about. Some of my favorite scenes obviously are going to come from Ernest and Molly interacting with each other. One of my favorite scenes a little bit later on in the movie is when there's a field fire and they're stuck inside of their house. The flames dancing across their windows kind of make it look like they're in hell. And Molly's in hell because she's getting poisoned, so she's in physical pain. And then Ernest is struggling with the guilt of all he's done to other people, including his wife. So he's in like a psychological hell. And the funny part is that the fire outside was caused by William Hale, just like both of their actual suffering. One great scene is near the end after the trial. Ernest and Molly meet up, and Molly seems willing to settle things, to come back together if Ernest is willing to tell the truth and to live in the light of his confession. And Ernest at first seems like he's willing to do it as well. He's ready. He's a changed man. He's not going to lie anymore. And then he proceeds to lie about poisoning her yet again, even though the truth is already out. This scene is great because it shows what the characters truly are, especially after all they've gone through. Ernest is still this little Weasley little rat that is so deep inside of his own lies that he's not even able to tell the truth after confessing so much. Molly's done with it. After Ernest can't admit that he was poisoning her, all she does is stand up and leave. And it shows that stoic side of her, that strength that she has inside of her now that she's gone through so much. She doesn't need to cry or yell or scream. She knows the kind of justice that she will be able to get, and so she coldly turns away from Ernest one last time. The house blowing up still caught me off guard, even though I knew it was coming. I even nudged my wife to say to pay attention because I knew it was coming up soon. I think I jumped a little bit because the explosion was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And that was one thing that I really liked about this movie, that it cuts away to just random acts of violence. People getting shot, people getting stabbed, happens all the time throughout the movie randomly and so quickly. And I think that helps keep the audience attention and shows how many people on the side get killed that we don't even know about, people that were never even investigated. But the death of Molly and Ernest's daughter was definitely the most soul-crushing part of the movie. The simple cut to such a small coffin really was more brutal than any violence that was on screen during the entire film. I also thought it was very unique that instead of having a gigantic wall of text and some old photos to end the movie, Marty uses one of the old radio retellings of the Osage murders that they did with a lot of the FBI cases. It was just so refreshing to see that instead of having to read and having the movie just fade out to a black. Well, that's all I have to say about the movie. It's really hard to end a video like this about such a tragic event in American history, besides recommending you go watch the movie, recommending you to read the book if you want to be more informed about a lot more of the facts, a lot of the background information, and a lot of the murders and investigations that were just never carried out. How many hundreds, maybe even possibly thousands of Osage Indians that were killed by other unsuspected murderers. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon.